Welcome to the Best Known Church Show, where we show you how to 10x your reach with church marketing that will help you increase your impact, make more disciples, and become the cornerstone of your community again. This is for the leaders with an outrageous vision, because anything less would be an inaccurate reflection of our Creator. The ones who have unreasonable faith, because you know God works unreasonable miracles. And the ones who are relentless in the pursuit of your calling, because anything less would not make a good and faithful servant. If that's you, you're in the right place. Now, please welcome your host and guide on this journey to become the best known organization in your community, Justin Nava.
Welcome. It is a fantastic day here. I'm glad you're watching this, Pastor. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, podcast, or I don't know, maybe someone pirated it and you're listening to it on a pirated software. I don't know how you're getting this, but I'm glad you're getting this, because just like I'm about to show you today, I want more people to know about our organization and how we can help, because listen, more people would engage with your church if they just knew who you were. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is getting more people to know about your church and know why you exist and what they can expect. I like to say everyone in the community knows where your local Walmart is, when it's open, and what to expect when they get there. I want everyone in the community to know where your church is, what to expect when they get there, and when you're open. So I want to go over all of that today and, really help you capture more attention, create more connections, and nurture a lasting relationship with the folks in your community that you're best equipped to serve. And so if we haven't met, my name is Justin Nava. I run a marketing agency called Nava Church Marketing. I've been doing marketing for over 10 years. And if this is a topic that you'd like to hear more about, click the like button. Let me know down below what you think of the show or what you'd like to hear next. I'm going to share a story here with you. It's a personal story, and it's not one that I share often because it doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't, quite honestly, it doesn't put me in the best light. And it was a hard lesson that I had to learn. And that's the fact that people just don't care about you unless you give them something to care about. Many years ago at my church, when I was the IT media director, before we had church communicators, but that's essentially was a function of my job. Easter was coming around and I wanted to do something different. I wanted to create a campaign where our people could get involved. But we had always done invite cards. We had little, you're invited, and had information about the church, a map, directions, link to the website, all that stuff. I wanted to give something that we could easily take out to the community. And an idea that I had was, I always see when there's events coming through town, traveling performances or annual events, the town fair or what have you. I noticed they always had certain spots in local businesses where they would hang posters. I know the dry cleaners that I went to, even my daycare, there was a spot, not my daycare, my daughter's daycare, there was a spot where there was always a poster for whatever upcoming event there was. And I thought it'd be really cool if we did some really nice posters and we handed them out to the congregation for them to pass out, and of course we as a church leadership would go out, take posters out into the community, and I wanted the whole community draped in these posters, inviting people to Easter service at our church. I believed in this so much. Our church of about 350, 400, on a Sunday morning, we'd have about 180. Isn't that funny how you have to clarify that? Our church is 350 people on roll. Actually, Sunday morning, we maybe got 180. I just find that funny that we always have to clarify that. So even though we only had 350 people potentially, I printed 500, and I really asked everyone in service to grab 5 and take them out into the community and put them in your local daycare, your favorite restaurant, your favorite coffee shop, your kids' schools, your work, your office, even the telephone pole that's right outside your neighborhood. I really wanted to see these posters out in the community. And I think maybe 3 people took 5 posters. I think another dozen people took 1 poster. And on that following Monday, I had way more than 400 posters and probably closer to 500 posters still in inventory closer to 500 than 400. And so really had to recast the vision here. And so the next Sunday I kind of said, hey, this isn't just to put out in the community. I want everyone talking about this Easter event. So I didn't say this, but we're going to try it again. And we're going to put posters up in the community. I want everyone to take 5 posters, put them up everywhere. More people took posters, which was good. However, I think for the rest of the Easter season, I maybe saw 2 of them in town. Granted, this is a town of 180,000 people. Should have been a lot more around town that I saw. And not only did our congregation just not buy into this effort, that's not the problem itself. It's that it was a very passive attempt to market the church, because even if it did work, even if it did, everyone took 5 posters and put those 5 posters around town, we had no way to really measure if they were working. We had no control over whether or not people were going to see that, over whether or not they were going to take action on it. And we didn't even know if it was going to work until Easter morning. And so, it's one of those things where it didn't work because our congregation just didn't buy into it. And that's my fault totally, because, I didn't do enough testing. I just thought it was a good idea. It was something cool. And not only that, our congregation was used to handing out invite cards. And we threw something new at them and hoped it would work. And, that was a learning opportunity for me. And the biggest takeaway was you can't just sit around and wait for people to take interest, right? Our congregation didn't have much interest in hanging posters, but even the ones that did, I had no way to tell, A, did they hang the posters? B, where did they hang the posters? I mean, they could have been hung in cities over that no one was going to come to our Easter service. They could have been hung around other Christian organizations that everyone already had an Easter service they were going to go to. I had no way to follow up to make sure that we were capturing the right attention, or the appropriate attention that we could capitalize on Easter. And then not only that, I had no way to monitor if this was working, right? It's kind of like the sign out front. I can't tell you how many churches I've talked to that dropped $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 on signage outside their church because someone told them, some surveyor said 80,000 cars would drive past this sign. You're going to have 80,000 people every week driving past this sign. Oh, you're going to have so many people. But you just got to sit out there and you're like, I hope they saw my sign. I hope they saw my sign. I hope they saw my sign. Hey, are you here because you saw it? You're just on a hope and a prayer. And so what I learned through that, and what I want you to take away, Pastor, is we can do a lot of passive marketing, which is just throwing something out there and hoping something happens. The real opportunity that's sitting in front of us is to not only create the opportunity, but capture attention and put your community's attention on that on that offer. Okay. So again, we don't want to just put something out there and hope it works. We want to capture attention and focus that attention on that opportunity that is to find better life, better purpose, better healing, better community, better life that Jesus promises us, the abundant life, right? And so, again, we can't just sit here and take interest. So what I want you to do is my goal for the end of the show for you today is to really understand kind of some new opportunities that are presented to us. You didn't learn about these in seminary. You didn't learn about these in any mentorships or any folks that you've studied under. These are things that we really only pick up in the marketing industry, which is why it's so important to have someone in your corner that has experience with this marketing. Now, I will say this, okay? You don't need to have any of what I'm about to show you to have a good church, right? A lot of folks have a church of 40, 70, 100, 150, 300 people that are watching this. You're the pastor of that kind of church, and you're like, hey, we've gotten along fine with just being a small church. And I understand that. And, my goal is to not get more people talking about you, to get more butts and seats. My goal is to get more people talking about you so you can make a greater impact on their lives, whether that impact is getting them into service, getting them into small groups, hearing about the gospel in a way that they've never heard it before, because no one can present the gospel in the way that you do. Even though you're using a methodology, a process, whatever it is, no one's going to present it in the way that you do. And so I want to make sure that you get your, for lack of a better word, tentacles, your church's tentacles out into the community, reaching to new people, because even though they've heard the gospel presentation 70 times since they were younger, or whether they're brand new to the community, or whether they've been in the community for 80 years, that one touch point may make all the difference. We hear about this all the time. It takes 7 touch points for someone to make a decision. Your seventh touch point could be the seventh time they've heard the gospel. It could be the 70th time to hear the gospel. The last thing I want is for God to be calling someone to him. You're not available. You're not reaching out to them. And instead, a wolf in sheep's clothing comes in, making big promises that are false and taking advantage of them, exploiting the message, the kingdom, the gospel, and they end up becoming raised, reared, and discipled into becoming a believer that is going to eventually say, hey, I'm a follower. And God says, I never knew you. Because we were standing on the sideline saying, I'm just a small church. I can't reach everyone. I can't make everyone know about me. I don't need everyone to engage with you. I need everyone to know about you. So that way, the people that God's calling to him, that he wants your church to be the facilitator, the guide to bring them to him, to disciple them as we're called to do. I want that to be your church. I don't want another church to come and veer them off into the wrong path. So that's very important. So I'm going to give you today, I want you to walk away with these new opportunities. Again, these are things that they don't necessarily teach in seminary, and I don't blame them, right? Because again, you're focused on ministry, you're focused on counseling, you're focused on leading a flock. It's very tough for a pastor to be the chief executive, the chief shepherd, and also the chief marketer. And it's even hard for an executive pastor. And don't even get me started on kids pastors and youth pastors trying to also wear the marketing hat. Even your volunteers, they're bivocational. Anytime you have bivocational, I love bivocational pastors, but the last thing I want is for ministry to compete with family time. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of bivocational pastors, volunteers, and lay leaders feel. And so I think it's very important to have someone in your corner. So let me be in your corner today. And I'm going to give you these new opportunities. And the first one is this. You have to look at your church and focusing on what's working now. Every person in your church, pastor, and someone has to know this. If it's not you, I think this is something the pastor should know. You should know how every person in the church first engaged with your church. Okay. I'll give you my rundown real quick. I was born and raised in a church. I was fourth generation of Clay Road Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. I was just born into that church. I was raised in that church. There was nothing I could do to get away from that church. Okay. Another church I came in because I was hired on as an intern. Another church I went into was when we moved, and we had tried out all kinds of non-denominational churches, and we eventually settled on, okay, fine, we're going to go to First Baptist. First Baptist didn't always have the best reputation when I was growing up on the edge of the Bible Belt, but we decided to go to First Baptist. And being in a Catholic community, the First Baptist Church was actually what I would call a normal Baptist church. And this ended up being, I'm saying this with a smile on my face because I don't mean any offense to other people that attend First Baptist churches. That's just how I grew up. First Baptist Church is where all the politicians went and rubbed elbows and got campaigns and donations. And for lack of better words, is where a lot of the shallow church people went, right? To just go feel good about themselves. I mean, this is how I grew up. Sorry if I was wrong. That's how I grew up. That was my knowledge of what a First Baptist church was. All right, now that all the First Baptist church pastors have tuned off the show, let's continue talking. Second Baptist pastors, welcome to the show. So I ended up visiting a lot of other churches, but I didn't really, First Baptist was not at the top of my list. And I was very surprised when I went to that church and found out it was not like any other First Baptist I had ever been to, attended to, interned under, visited, performed at, anything like that. It was like my down-home Baptist home church, right? And then I visited another church that was just because it was the closest Baptist church to me that wasn't super KJV and also wasn't super traditional. They had lots of stuff for my family. I really enjoyed that. And then now I'm in a church because I'm working in it. So, you have to know how every single person in your church first came to engage with your church. Were they invited by a friend? Did they find you on Google? Did they ask around? Did they just move? Did they come and then leave and then come back? Every person in your church, you should know how they came to be in your church. Okay? Why is that important? Because you have to focus on what's working and then continue to duplicate that. You've got however many people are in your church right now. And I understand some of them are family, so, the kids don't count. Folks like me that were second or third generation, it's a given they're going to come to. It's not a given that they're going to go to your church. Don't think that, right? They may say, I started coming here, and some of them may say, I go here because my mom comes here, and she'll be super offended because I go somewhere else. A lot of them may choose to stay. because they grew up here. This is what they're comfortable with. This is what they feel loved in. This is where they experience community, and there's just not much of a desire to go somewhere else. Maybe they did try to go somewhere else and they came back. You can't know unless you find out. So every single person in your church, you should know why they first engaged with your church. Now, a lot of pastors will say, well, we're a small church, so most of our members are family members or they're invitees. That's great. So you can double down on that. Focus on inviting. You have a culture of invitation. You just need to scale that, make it bigger, and put more effort into it. Because if you have a culture of invitation without trying, imagine what would happen if you did. And maybe you have a lot of folks that say, well, we're here because of our kids ministry. Well, then don't focus so much on promoting the church, but promote the kids ministry. And through the kids, you can reach the parents. Look at why every person in your church, get that what we call demographic data. That's not even technically demographic data. It is a data point. But I think that's a very valuable, low-hanging data point. And Pastor, if this is too much for you, if you don't have time, if you're bivocational, you don't have the effort to get in contact with everyone, maybe it's more than 100 people in your church. If you're listening to this, by the way, congratulations. I think that's awesome. Thank God for the people in your flock. I think that's fantastic. If it's too much for you to do as one person, you need to recruit some people. Your elders or deacons are fantastic for this. Do the whole, we do this all the time for potlucks, right? If you're letters A through G, you're going to bring a main course. H through N, you're going to bring a side dish. P through Z, you're going to bring dessert, whatever. Assign these to some lay leaders, deacons, or elders. Say, hey, Pastor, hey, Deacon Joe, I want you to call our roster from A through G. Just ask them how they're doing. How can we pray for them? And then also say, hey, by the way, I don't know this. How did you first engage with our church? And get that data point. Also make it valuable, so you're not just wasting their time improving ourselves. That's also a great connection point for someone to meet a deacon, meet an elder. I think it's horrendous how many church members don't know who the deacons are, who the elders are. They think it's some cabal behind the scenes that are secretly voting down budgets, right? I mean, that's the honest truth. So find out what's working right now for how every person in your church came to that church. And then once you figure this out, you're kind of getting a hint at who you're best equipped to serve. If you're a church that has accidentally stumbled into an invite culture, and when I say invite culture, I don't even necessarily mean you might say, well, people are just coming to our church, but we only get like a few families a year. That's still an invite culture. It's a very small invite culture. But again, you have it because you've accidentally stumbled upon it, or you've been accidentally gifted with this. Imagine what's going to happen if you actually put some intentionality into it and make it easy for your people to invite more people. That's what I'm trying to get at. So you now know who you're best reaching out to. And then once you figure that out, you have to find out where these people are outside of church. Okay. We do a very good job of isolating church. We talked last week about the waffle boxes, right? We've got a God box, a money box, a family box, a friend box, a father box, a work box, a hobby box. And we've compartmentalized all these things. And we do a very good job as a church saying we are only here at 11 a.m. and maybe during office hours during the week. But your people are somewhere every minute of the day. Right? And so figure out where they are outside of church. Now, obviously, we're not going to count their home, although their neighborhood could be a part of it. But they're going to work. They're going to schools, or they're dropping kids off at schools. They're going to grocery stores, coffee shops, restaurants, community events, free events, paid events, concerts. Let's see, what else do we do? Farmers markets. You could even count things such as meetings and other not fun stuff. Find out where they are outside of church, and this is a great place to begin nurturing new relationships and capturing attention in these locations. For example, if you're a church that does really well with kids ministry, hey, we've got when I say really well with kids ministry, I'm referring to in the way that you are attracting new people to your church. You're getting new people in, they hear about you, they check you out because of your kids ministry. You may not think it's well or it's the best. I don't even care if it is the best. I want to know, is it properly equipped to reach the people God's called you to reach and serve? So if many people are coming to your church because, hey, I heard you had a great kids program. Okay, great. So where can you meet these people that are already coming to you? Where are they throughout the week? That's where you can find more people like that to capture their attention. Going back to my example here, if you are a church that's reaching families with young kids, then a great place to get involved is the local daycare. Pastor, Start sending lay leaders, elders, deacons, whatever. Start sending them to volunteer and help out at the daycare. Maybe even work at the daycare. Or the school board. Get on the school board. Get in at school events. Support the school. Donate to the school. Get inroads there because you already know you're reaching some people that are there. Imagine what would happen if you intentionally went out to reach some people that were there. Maybe you're reaching a lot of blue-collar families, a lot of middle-aged families. Kids have gone off to trade school or just gone out to work. It's just ma and pa, they're still working. Maybe they're going to retire in a few years. Okay, where do these folks like to go? Okay, so you're going to start reaching out at community events, maybe the VFW, get into some parades or something like that. Go out and they're very active. They like to go to sports events. So being a part of sports events. You don't even have to, you don't have to pay money for these things. I'm not talking about buying a sponsorship. I'm talking about just being there and being intentional about being there, to meet new people, to introduce yourself, to introduce the church. And again, hey, if you want to make it a part of your discipleship process, by all means, make it a part of your discipleship process. Man, I can't talk today. But you're accidentally meeting the needs and communicating in the right way to the people that are there. Again, imagine what could happen if you did it intentionally. And I know you're thinking, I'm just a small church. I can't be in all these places. I'm not asking you to. I'm listing off examples to get your mind thinking, because I think a lot of folks tell you to do something and they don't help you out with some examples to get the gears turning. That's at least how my brain works. I'm trying to help you out too, Pastor. So if you're thinking, I'm just a small church, I can't be everywhere. Okay, that's fine. Don't start everywhere, but you got to start somewhere. And right now you're just being a part of your church and you're not being out in the community. And you've got people in your community that are connected with you. So just go find more people like that. Imagine if you started a new discipleship process and roadmap and system and process to where you bring people, you sit them down, you follow up with them, you put them in a new members class, and you're like, hey, this is great, but now we're not reaching Chinese-speaking people. We need more Mandarin tongues in here. So you totally ditch everything that you've already been working, go out and try to hire a new Mandarin-speaking Sunday school teacher, but what about the deaf Mandarin speaking folks? And so you got to figure out MSL, Chinese Sign Language, and then you've got to go and find, imagine just ditching what's working to go out and try to find something new. Focus on what's working, Pastor. Don't try to, that's an extreme example, because that's how we are when we have something that's working and then say, you know what, I want to try something new because I'm bored. Pastor, by the time you're bored of it, that means it's actually that means it's starting to actually gain some traction. This is especially heinous in the church communications environment, which is why I always say go into these Facebook groups or help support groups or take these phone calls with folks with a grain of salt, including myself, because everyone's trying to focus on the platform and not trying to focus on the end result. And what's the end result? To grow the kingdom, to make more disciples, to make a greater impact. And so that's why I'm not here to sell you a tool. I'm here to equip you to engage with more peoples, to nurture relationships, to build lasting connections so you can then further engage with them and disciple them and share the gospel, evangelize with them, whatever you want to call it. So find out who's working with step one. Find out what's working or what has worked accidentally without any intention, and then put some intentionality behind it. The last thing is then to focus on being everywhere that these people are. So you just start with a couple things, right? So if we have a great kids program, and then you find out most of the kids in your Sunday school classes go to Reed Elementary, just making up a word here, making up a name here, go to Reed Elementary. Well, hey, start going to do things intentionally around Reed Elementary. Don't just go to every elementary school, go intentionally be around Reed. Go give backpacks to students who need it. Go pay for lunches for parents that can't afford it. Go do events around that elementary school where there's kids, there's families that you can reach out to and build relationships with. Because the people that you're reaching that live around there now, there's probably even more people around there that you can be equipped to serve without even really trying, except for just being more known without having to put more investment into infrastructure. And then once you have that going, then you can focus on getting on new platforms in front of new people. The platform in this case is Reed Elementary and that geographic area. But then once you know that, you can kind of figure out, okay, so what radio station are these folks listening to? What podcasts are they listening to? What blogs are they reading? What news articles are they reading? What newspapers are they getting? What magazines are they getting? And then you can start to focus on finding more people like that consume the same type of media, that consume the same type of product, so then you can be there alongside that product and be introduced. Because again, it's not about making one thing work every time. It's about making a process that bathes people in who the church is. So no matter where they are, they can't help but think about you and know about you. It's like a puzzle. Okay, the whole church communications game and getting more people aware of your church is like a puzzle. If I take a blue puzzle piece, I can't tell if that's the sky, an ocean, a lake, or a shirt. A blue shirt. I can't tell that from one puzzle piece. And so if you put all your effort into one communication method, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, Yellow Pages, newspaper, signage outside, that is one puzzle piece. And they may realize that this is a puzzle, this is a church, but they don't know, they don't get the full picture. Why does this church exist? How can I become a better person engaging with them? How can my life be better? How can I be a better dad? How can I be a better husband? How can I be better with my finances? How can I be better for my neighborhood? How can I be involved in a community? How can I feel more how can I feel more worthy? How can I feel more valuable? How can I feel less sad, less suicidal? How can I feel less hurt? How can I feel more confident? These are all puzzle pieces that you have to put together. Because eventually that one you've done puzzles where you're putting these pieces together. You have no idea what the puzzle is, but once you finally click in that one piece, you're like, oh, this is a ship. It's a ship on a lake. Now you know what you're building towards. Now you have the full picture, even though all the pieces aren't there. And so when I say be everywhere, people need to be hearing about you in multiple ways. A radio broadcast, your church sign, a poster out in the community, someone giving them an invite card, seeing you at the local farmer's market, seeing your church hand out backpacks or paying for lunches or paying for people at Starbucks, buying groceries. On a rainy day, send some guys out to the grocery store with umbrellas just to walk people to get their umbrella. Hey, give them 2 umbrellas. And then they give someone an umbrella and say, hey, I'll walk with you, or you can meet me here at front and hand us the umbrella back for the next person. Hey, we'll help you with your groceries. That was a side note. Once people start seeing you in multiple places, they'll start to take you seriously. And again, you can't sit here and think, I'm just a small church, I can't do this. Well, your pastor, first of all, you're right. You can't do this. You need to develop a team. And the only way you're going to develop a team is to begin to reach more people and develop those relationships. And you can start with yourself. You can start with a couple people that you trust. Like I said, your elders, your deacons, some lay leaders would be fantastic for this. It's really not too much theology and preaching and teaching, so you don't have to have the gift of teaching to be able to do this kind of thing. And again, be everywhere is the last step, not the first step. So don't think, hey, I can't do this. I can't be everywhere. I don't expect you to be everywhere. You got to start with one spot. And then from there, multiply. I'll give you a good example here. Actually, let me first tell you kind of what to do with this information here. So here's what I want you to do, Pastor. I want you to think of 5 people in your church. 5, and don't think of just any 5 people. I want you to think of 5 people that you're just thinking, hey, if these 5 people could just bring 5 people like them, and I could have 25 people just like these folks, we'd have something going here. I'm talking about find the people that show up early, that help put out chairs, take down chairs, would help clean the carpets if you ask them to. You know, one of our good volunteers, they don't even have to be there all the time, but you're just thinking, hey, this is what an ideal church member, this is closer to an ideal church member, someone that actually takes this covenant relationship better. If I can have more people like them. Okay. So think about these 5 people. My question to you is, these 5 people, do you know how they first got involved with your church? And if you don't, go ask them. Just these 5. You don't got to do everyone else. Just ask these 5 people. And not only that, something that pastors do, and I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just not productive in what I do in marketing. Think about these 5 people and who they are and what makes them unique. Now, a lot of folks will say, well, these are 5 different people. They grew up differently. They work different jobs. They live in different areas. Yeah, I understand that. But what do they all have in common? They're all parents. They all want the best for their kids. They all grew up without parents, maybe. They all grew up in the church. Maybe they all had bad upbringings. And now they're on fire for God. Therefore, they're one of my best people. What do they all have in common? And then find out with that commonality, where are they outside of church? And then how can you be there as a church body? Again, you don't need any of this to have a God-honoring, quote-unquote, successful church. I agree with you. You don't need any of this. You also don't need a church building. You don't need air conditioning. You don't need chairs. We like to ask the question, and I think it's a good question. I think it's a very good question. However, it's not a practical question. If there was no AC, if there was no chairs, if there was no music, if there was no lighting, if there was no people, if there was no pastor, if there was no worship band, if it was just God here on a Sunday morning, would you come? I think that's a great question. It's not practical. So I agree, you don't need any of this. However, in order to if you are a growth-minded pastor who has unreasonable faith, by the way, that's my bracelet for this week, unreasonable faith, then I believe we need to take unreasonable actions to tell more people about Jesus, about God, and I believe that is best facilitated through a church. I love evangelist ministries that go out and make connections in communities and disciple people and share the Romans road or tell folks about Jesus. I think that's great. I think it's also fruitless in a lot of ways because there's no connection to a body of believers. They just say, hey, have you made a decision? If you were to die today and heaven and hell was real and you appeared before God, what would you say? Hey, that's fine. There's not a context of community there. And so even if they do make a decision, the next steps are difficult. However, if it's the church acting on this behalf to nurture those kind of relationships where those talks can happen, I think that's a great thing because there's an easy inroad to connect for further discipleship. It's not, hey, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, see you later, and on to the next town to ask the next question to the next victim. I think it's very good for churches to go out and do this as a church effort, as a church body effort. And you don't need hundreds of people. You can start with just a handful. A house church could do this and make a greater impact. A house church could just stay a house church. And instead of growing, just birth more house churches. This works for a small church, medium church, and large church. The difference is, I believe, my heart, is the small churches will do this better to make a more fulfilling, fruitful impact than the large churches who are just trying to get people in seats so their giving can go up so they can continue to pay for their programs. That's the difference. A show on Hulu right now, Only Murders in the Building. It's a comedy, mystery, whodunit. It's got Steve Martin, Martin Short, Selena Gomez, it's a full cast of characters. It's an amazing show. I love it. I didn't hear about it till the second season. Not sure why. My dad started watching it, and he was like, oh, you got to watch it. Okay, Dad. He's always saying, oh, you got to watch these shows. And I'm like, well, I'll get to it. He probably told me 3 or 4 times that I should watch this show. And I finally said, all right, I'm going to add it to my list. Finally, I got to it on my list. Fantastic show. So I'm going to tell you now, you got to watch it. And then I told my mom, my parents are divorced. I told my mom, I said, hey, you should watch this show. It's great. You'd like it. It's got Steve Martin, Martin Short, Selena Gomez. It's a great mystery whodunit. She loves shows like that. She watched it on the first try. Cool. Told my wife. I had to tell my wife like 3 or 4 times, hey, you should check this show out. Now that's a TV show. And now when I see people in town, when I see people, other parents at my daughter's school, or I see family, and I say, hey, have you seen Only Murders in the Building? I'll hear, yeah, I've seen it. It's really good. Or like my cousin will say, oh yeah, I've heard about that show. And that show moves up in her mind as like, hey, I should pay attention to this. Right? And I think many of us, that's happened before. Have you seen the new Top Gun? Oh, man, I haven't seen it yet. I heard it was awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay. It's moved up in my head, right, of priorities. Things I should do to fit in. Things I should do to relax and enjoy and become more comfortable. We do this all the time with TV shows. It's that point of contact. If I were to see an ad of Only Murders in the Building, I would not pay much attention to it. If my dad tells me about it and then I see an ad, my thought goes, oh yeah, that's the show that dad told me about. Thought number 2. Then my dad tells me again, thought number 3. Then someone tells me about that they're watching. Oh, well, my dad liked it and Kelly liked it. Well, hey, and I must like it. Maybe I'll actually watch it. This is what it means to be everywhere. It's not plastering the streets as like some kind of sci-fi futuristic where there's advertisements everywhere and you can't escape it. That's not what I'm talking about. But you got to get people talking about you. How to get people talking about you? Here's what it is. You have to be out there where they are. No one's going to talk about you if you aren't where they are. The reason why I'm hearing about Only Murders in the Building is because my dad is where I am. The only reason my mom knows about it is because I was where she is. The only reason I had it re-engaged with me is because I saw an article, or Top Gun. I saw an article that said, hey, in the 11th week after it's released, it got more money than it did the previous week. More people are going to see it now than they did last week. This is such a good movie. Because people are writing about it. So what would it look like, Pastor? Imagine a world where your church members would go out and say, hey, I'd love for you to come to church on this Sunday or come to this event. And the people they're inviting say, oh, I've heard about that church. I heard that they were doing this pay for school lunch on the radio. Oh, I saw them doing something at the farmer's market. I saw that poster about them I'm not going to let this poster thing down. I saw a poster about them at my kids' daycare. I saw them handing out backpacks. I saw them handing out groceries during lockdown. The reason they saw you is because you know the people that would pay attention to you and the people you're best equipped to serve, you know where they are the other 6 days of the week. Or maybe even the other 7 days of the week because they're not even going to church at all. And if we just stay in our little hole, or if we go out and try to reach people in a way that we're not reaching people right now, no one's going to pay attention to us because we're not speaking the right language. And whatever language we're accidentally speaking right now that's communicating, speak more of that language. And even if you just stay a small church, you'll at least be a small church with a bigger impact, growing the kingdom, making more disciples, having more decisions, more baptisms, more calls to the altar, more stories of healing. And you're improving the community, even though on a grand scale it might just be ever so little. But they're throwing huge parties in heaven because you're actively doing the duty of going out and making people aware of your church and making those connections so that when God eventually calls them, which I don't think God just calls people once. I think he does multiple. Hey, you need to get involved. You need to get in touch. Remember when you said you weren't going to do that last week? I'm calling you again. Your church is there. You come to mind because they've seen you before, because you put in the intentionality to be where they are, to get them talking about you. Okay? So how do you get more people talking about your church? First of all, you got to figure out who's talking about you right now, your people. Second of all, you got to figure out where they are and go to there so that people just like them talk about you where they are. And then you have to focus on expanding that. I say be everywhere, but be everywhere they are. Whatever radio they listen to, whatever podcast they listen to, whatever news they listen to or read, or whatever articles they read, whatever social media profiles they follow. Be there. And you're not going to hit every one of them. You may find out they listen to between these 5 people that I'm asking you. Again, think of those 5 people and, what do they do? What do they like? What do they do outside of church? And how can you find more people like them? Between the 5 of them, there may be 100 podcasts and you're only going to get on 1. That's 1 more than you're on right now. I think that's a huge, huge low-hanging fruit. It's so big. It's pulling that branch down. Hey, these people are listening to hours of podcasts that you can just easily send an email, send a couple emails if you have to. Hey, our folks love you. I think I could contribute to the conversation. Let's have me on as a guest. There's a special email that we write as part of our program to help pastors get on podcasts, but that's essentially what it says. It's just asked nicer and neater. Think about that. How can you get people talking about you like we talk about TV shows? You got to be where they are. You have to make that impression. Once you start hitting them in multiple touch points, they can't help but talk about you. That's the secret. And any church can do this. Even a small church can do this. If you want help with this, give us a call, 832-861-7654. Send us a message, leave a comment or whatever. I'll find you. And let's talk about what that looks like. Because what we do is we help you figure out how to best communicate yourself and represent yourself when you go out into the community. Then when you start making those touch points and they say, hey, who is this church? They go online to research you because they don't know about you. They've only seen about you and how you can best represent yourself online and get people talking about you online. And then how can you get in front of new audiences? How can you focus on being everywhere and having someone in your corner that's just going to do this for you, run the ads for you, which, by the way, Google Ad Grant, get it if you qualify. But then also get on new platforms, get people talking with you. I have a prospect here that did a really good job of this, and we're just going to blow it even more for him when we get started. He's doing really good. He even got in a meeting with the president, and he's got articles written about how pastor of this random church got in the room with the president to hear his heart. I think that's awesome. That's the kind of stuff that we would do for you as well. So give us a call, 832-861-7654. You can go to 360.novachurchmarketing.com to get a free consult to see if this would even be a good fit for you. And we'll even give you the strategy that we would implement so you can go implement it yourself. That's the ministry part of the business. We're happy to do that and assist you in any other way we can. If you want to do it yourself, you can't afford someone like us, what we can do is we can do some over-the-shoulder work where you actually do it. But then we kind of come alongside you and guide you. Hey, don't do that, do this. We've seen this work. We've seen that not work. Avoid that pitfall. We'll do that with you because we want to see the kingdom grow. We want to see parties in heaven every day, every hour, every minute. Your church plays a role in that, and we want to assist in any way possible. That's the mission of this organization, to see 1 million churches become the cornerstone of their community. We're starting in 2022. We want to see so many people impacted to where people know these million churches. So you stop being the best kept secret and you start becoming, oh yeah, I know that church. They do good work. God bless you guys. I'll see you next week.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the Best Known Church Show with Justin Nava. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest news, strategies, and resources that you need to reach 10x more people and become the best known in your community. To send us a message or leave a voicemail for Justin to be played on a future show, visit thebestknownchurchshow.com. And if you'd like to work with us so you can focus on your ministry, give us a call at 832-861-7654. Until next time, stay outrageous, unreasonable, and relentless.